Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And happy 4th of July, Julie.
Thank you.
Brumley.
Happy Independence Day.
Yeah, you celebrate leaving us, but we don't celebrate you going. Do you know what I mean?
I didn't know that. Well, I mean, I did know that, but that's funny.
We don't celebrate, we don't celebrate a departure.
You'd have a lot of departures to celebrate, I think, then.
We would have, yes. People have separated, in the good old days
Yeah.
when half of the world was pink with the was it pink or was it red? That was the color of the empire,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was an empire for sure.
Oh, the good old days. What? Yeah.
Mm.
Cholera, dysentery, people.
Plagues.
Yeah. The British invented the concentration camp.
I did not know that.
But for
That's
the Boer
fascinating.
War, we didn't do the gassing, but we did invent the concentration camp in the Boer War, right? That's South Africa. Again,
Wow.
we're looking at colony stuff. Anyway,
You have just educated me. Thank you.
so we're like 3,000 miles away, or about 12 inches by Zoom.
Right.
So now we've got the frivolities out of the way. We're going to talk healing, and
Yeah.
Does healing resonate with you?
Very much so. It is something that I think I've pursued in my adult life mostly. I don't think I knew in my younger years that I needed healing. Um, and for me, it's a very active word. It's not something that is past tense. I will always be healing. And so, yes, I absolutely resonate with that word.
Is there a word that you resonate more with?
Oh, that's a really good question. Maybe the word that popped into my head, so I'm just going with it, is transformation. I think for me, when I think of the word healing, what I think of is the transformation that has come from all of the things that I have done to heal from the trauma that I experienced. But I think when I think of the word healing, I honestly think of mind, body, and spirit connection. Um, for a long time, when I started the process of healing back in 2005, so almost 20 years ago, I was in my early 30s then. And I remember seeking out a therapist because I just felt shattered. Like, I don't know how to survive. I'm a mess. I'm broken, all those things that we can think. I'm a nuisance, I'm a burden, Um, and what I remember was really focusing on the mind piece early on, like everything that was going on in my head and how that kept me. And we're going to talk about this a little later, I think, but that actually kept me really stuck. But I didn't know that. So for years, I really focused on the mind piece. The spirit piece has always been really there for me. I really have a deep and abiding relationship with God. That's how I survive through the things that I've experienced. And so I think that foundation that was even built by my adoptive mom has really helped me through a lot of this, and deepening that connection has helped me. But then the biggest shifting piece for me that connected all of that was the body. And that was in the last 3.5 years. And what ended up happening was all this mind knowledge that I had created and built up of, I think, 4 or 5 different therapists over the course of 2005 all the way to current. Really, most of those, all of them, besides the last one, had no adoption understanding at all. But this body piece, the somatic piece, which that's all it means, somatic means body, has actually shifted everything from my brain into my body, and this understanding, it's been so integrated, um, that now I feel like I actually am embodying all of the things that I have learned. And honestly, I pursued my master's degree back in 2006, or no, 9, because I wanted so desperately to heal. And I thought, if I can heal through learning this stuff, then I can help others. I pursued a master's degree in counseling for that reason, that I'd always wanted to help others. And what's so interesting about that is it uncovered all of this stuff. It was the beginning of me really recognizing what healing was going to be. And I didn't know it was this big mountain over here that I needed to kind of overcome. And so for me, it was the small, imperceptible shifts of consistency that I made on a daily basis in daily practices, whether that's, writing down 5 things that I'm grateful for every day. And for me, it was more like, not just, oh, yay, it's beautiful outside and the trees are green. That's thrilling. It's more like, this is going to sound really funny, but I have 2 dogs. We talked about this yesterday. And when one of them will come up to me and like want some love, he'll put his little paw on my lap and then lean into me. It's the cutest thing. And so sometimes I will write about that. Like, I'm so grateful for Murphy and how he loves me and how he shows me affection. It's like actionable things. So there's been that has been really transformative for me. There's been reading and educating myself, but the biggest shift, like I said, was the somatic stuff. It was learning how to ground, um, doing yoga and meditation daily, adding that into my daily schedule. So when something may trigger me, then I'm able to actually have these tools at my disposal that I'm practicing on a daily basis that keep me regulated. So my nervous system, and I think most adoptees' nervous systems are pretty much on fire. Like, we cycle through a ton of trauma states: fight, flight, fawn, freeze, flop, all the time, because that's how we entered into the world. At least in my experience, that's how I did. And so it was learning how to regulate those things. And once I realized, this awareness came upon me of, man, I've been in this place for a long time and didn't even know it. And I started nurturing my body and listening to what it needed. And whenever there was pain, actually going, I wonder what that means, versus going to get an ibuprofen. It was actually leaning into what my body was telling me, and doing those things consistently helped me to kind of, what what we call in the profession, move up the ladder, like be able to titrate myself up the ladder from that flop state of depression and stuckness and numbness of emotion, to actually moving up to a place where the term is frolic, where I felt like I could actually play and enjoy. Whereas before, like, sitting down and coloring seems stupid to me. Like, why would I do that? I don't have time for that. I have things to do. But it was cool to be able to watch this transformation of myself now, looking back and go, well, the shift really was adding that somatic piece for me. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes. That's it. Done. That was a very quick episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Frolic. Right. I like the frolic thing.
Yeah.
We did a episode a couple of days ago with a comedian, and we are talking about laughing at trauma. And to me, it's a relief, right? Like bringing a sense of humor to trauma.
Yeah.
Because we've got these dark, foreboding books, The Primal Wound.
Yeah. 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 The journey to the adopted self.
The body keeps the score.
Thank you, Bessel.
It's gonna settle that score, and it's gonna ruin you for the rest of your life, right? What's the ladder? What? Because I've heard of a ladder, but
yeah,
your ladder's different to mine. I think, I don't know. Just checking.
Okay, so For me, I do a lot of like I'm training in somatics right now to try to help the adoptee population that I'm working with, but and myself, to be honest. But it's called the polyvagal ladder. Have you heard of polyvagal theory?
I have heard of polyvagal theory, but I've not heard of the polyvagal ladder. So
Okay.
pick that
Well,
up.
the polyvagal ladder is a visual. So it literally, when you look it up, you'll see images of a ladder. And at the bottom, there is the dorsal vagal shutdown, there's the sympathetic in the middle, and then there's the ventral vagal, which that's where frolic lives, is at the top of the ladder. And so when we talk about fight, flight, fawn, freeze, and flop, that's kind of a newer one. When we talk about those, they live in the bottom sections. They live in, the dorsal vagal shutdown. And I'm using big words. What it's based upon is the vagus nerve, which is like a master nerve that runs from the base of our skull to the base of our behind, basically. And it manages, it has its little, nerve tentacles that goes everywhere throughout your body. And do you know much about the chakra system?
No, I've not
Okay.
been into that stuff. So.
Well, and it's not like the new age. I don't look at it as this new age thing anymore. I used to, like, that's far off. It's not so, but what I've realized after doing the research that I've done is all it is this connection to the nerve bundles that are a part of that vagus nerve. And so those nerve bundles that start from the root all the way up to the base of our skull, they're kind of like brains in each one of those centers. There's 7 of them. And as we can connect to them and recognize when we don't feel safe, for example, that's of course when we will fight or flight, right? Sometimes freeze. Think about animals in the wild. Have you ever heard of Peter Levine?
Yeah.
Um, okay, yeah. So he talks a lot about when an animal is in the wild, what do they do after they've just, been through trauma? They shake it off. And so a lot of these things that our bodies naturally want to do, we become conditioned to not do them as we get older because they're weird. But the bottom line is our bodies need them. And so, for example, one of the things that I do when I recognize I'm kind of in that flop state in the dorsal vagal shutdown is I will put my hand over my heart and be compassionate and go, okay, what's going on here? Why are you feeling frozen? And I don't actually like the question why. So what is it about right now that is causing this shutdown feeling in you? And I can sit there with it, have compassion with it, not judge it. That's a big one. No judgment, just be really curious about it. And what that does is, I'm sure you've heard the word titrate, it titrates you up the ladder and moves you up to the place where you are able to frolic. But you can't do it in like, okay, let's say I'm in a shutdown state. I can't go, I'm going to go for a run right now. That's not going to do it. Like you've got to titrate yourself up the ladder with these little imperceptible shifts, like I talked about, over time to help you come out and climb up. Does that make sense?
Yes. So the chakras and the ladder are two different metaphors for the same thing.
Pretty much, yes. And they're very related. Um, they're nerve plexuses. That's what they're called. They're plexuses inside the body that when we tune into those and actually know what they influence and the organs that they influence. And I don't want to go into all of that because, first of all, I would need to look at something to do that. And I don't want to do that. But really educating yourself on that and understanding how they interact with your body. And the word is how the nerves innervate the tissue. It's so helpful because what that's done for me, for example, I have lower back issues and have had lower back issues for years. I actually have degenerating discs. It's a thing. A lot of people have them at my age, but it's been years. And when I finally learned about that area, which it's the sacral, that's the sacral chakra. When I finally learned about that and started leaning into the pain that was there and why, it has to do with pleasure, creativity, play. I wasn't allowing any of those in my life. And so there was all of this tension down there and pain. And once I started allowing those things in, the pain began to dissipate. It was unbelievable. And I know that sounds kind of like woo woo weird, but I'm telling you, it was a shift for me. Now, I'm not saying I'm completely out of the woods. My back still hurts, but nowhere near what it did. I mean, I was like paralyzed in the morning. I couldn't get up. And so as I've started to really tune in, like attune to my body and listen to what it needs, I've been able to shift up the ladder. So that's how they connect.
Okay, so the titrate takes me back to uh, school.
Chemistry.
Yeah, and I was in the worst. I was in the worst. I was in the lowest group for chemistry.
Yeah, me too.
They gave us the toughest teacher,
Uh,
uh, who was a real hard case. Very, yeah, yeah, not a motivational, not an
not an
inspiration.
inspiration.
Yeah, I got. We do a mock exam, do public exams, right, in the summer when we're 16, and then we do a mock, 6 months before to see how you're going to do, right?
Ooh, yeah.
And
That's actually really good. That's a good
well, yeah,
idea.
it is a good idea. So I got an A in the mock, and he said to me, "You fluked that. You fluked that. If you don't work really hard, you won't get an A in the summer." And I thought, that's possibly the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Anyway, I got a B. But yeah, so titration takes me back uh,
Yeah.
to chemistry, and big shout out to, I don't think you'll be listening. Um, yeah, he's cool. It was his first name was Morris,
Ah. Mm-hmm.
and we used to do this when we were in the final 2 years of school, high school, secondary school. Um, we used to do each class, each form did took it in turns to do an assembly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this assembly is the stuff that happens at the start of the school day. I don't know if you have that in. You call it homeroom in
Yeah.
yeah.
Homeroom. Yeah.
So but all the like all the kids go in, not just the 30 in that class. Anyway, so uh, his class did Morris dancing for their class assembly
That is
because the guy's name
so
was.
funny.
So they put all their white, like put the white cricket trousers on, and then they got some garters, these little things, put them around the legs, and then they got some tambourines and sticks, and did Morris dancing. Okay, so I guess they were frolicking then. So
They sure were.
titration, I remember a titration is you kind of like you got this little glass tube with a stopper on it, and you squeeze the bulb at the end of the stopper, you put it into the liquid, and it sucks it up. That's what titration is.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty
Mm-hmm.
good. I can remember that, right?
Yeah,
Given
I'm very impressed. You know what's so funny is when I said that, what went through my head was literally, I'm like, he's going to refer this back to chemistry.
okay, well, I'm a little less brainy, right? So, and it was 41 years ago.
Uh,
So, 41, yeah, 41 years ago. So that's what it means, chemistry. What does it mean in Polyvagal's ladder theory?
yeah, polyvagal theory, basically it's the same thing. It's being able to, so the way that I look at it is, let's say you're that test tube, you personally. You are adding a grounding tool to yourself, whatever that may be. Like I said, hand over heart, something very simple. When I'm in that place of complete stuckness, that shows my body, hey, I see you, I hear you, I recognize what you're dealing with right now. I got you. Because so that's, you're adding something to that test tube to help you move up, to help you suck up, integrate whatever it is that you were just talking about. So if I make that correlation directly to it, that's what I would say. Now, let's say you're in the sympathetic state, which in the middle, that's like you have been threatened and you need to run, or you need to fight. It's one of those. Then in that situation, you would do something a little bit more up the ladder, like I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to shake. I'm going to stomp. I'm going to do something physically that relates to whatever it is that I'm feeling threatened by. So that's what I mean by titrating up.
Yeah. So it's that moving. It's like the liquid going up the tube is the
Yes,
same as the movement up the ladder. So
that's
yeah,
correct.
they are all these things. There's three metaphors there, right? This titration is one metaphor. The ladder is another metaphor,
Yeah.
and the chakras is
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
metaphor. Have you heard of well, staying on the somatic theme, right?
Of
Have you heard of kinesiology?
course.
Yeah. Have you heard of a book? Did we talk about this yesterday? I talked about a book called Power versus Force. Power versus Force by David.
No, I have not heard of that book.
So that's another ladder. It's a scale of human consciousness.
Ooh, cool.
Scale of human consciousness, and it goes from 0 to 1,000. And 0 is dead. 20
Yeah.
is shame.
Oh, no, I have. I
You
know
heard of that?
exactly what you're talking about. Yes, I actually in my program I actually have a picture of that. Shame is at the bottom. Yeah.
But the guy David Hawkins, he
Yes,
developed
I know
that.
exactly what you're talking about. I love that.
He devised that using kinesiology. So the first half of the Power versus Force book is his kind of methodology, which is
Ooh,
kinesiology.
I love that. I need to get that book because I share his stuff all the time, and I do cite him. I'm like, yes, and then the levels of consciousness, his things happening to me, things happening by me, things happening for me, things happening through me. Do you know that?
Uh, I've heard of that. I haven't seen that put alongside it.
Oh,
Interesting,
it's
of course, to
amazing.
do. He also he it's not mentioned on the scale, but it is mentioned in one of the books. He calibrates the wag of a dog's tail, the wag of a dog's tail, and it
Wow.
calibrates. I don't know, something like 350,
Huh.
400, 500. You
So
know,
he
so
measures it.
yeah, the calibration.
Yeah,
The,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he calibrates using kinesiology,
Hmm.
and he calibrates different things. So
It's fascinating.
I for me, it's like that's the score that I'm looking at.
Yeah,
Bessel van
that's
der
right.
Kolk wants me to
Yes.
look at the doom and gloom, right?
Yeah.
He wants to scare the bejesus out of me,
Yep.
right? But what I'm going to look at, I'm going to look at David Hawkins and his score, and that's how my average level.
That is actually really interesting. You saying that make just I had this huge idea of putting that alongside the ladder. Because if you do that, that's exactly what happens. When you're in shame, you're in flop. But as you move up to enlightenment, then you're at the top of the ladder frolicking. I mean, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Those
because
and
different
emotions have
people.
frequencies.
Yes, emotions have frequencies, and yet they're all just energy,
Mm-hmm.
just
Yep.
energy.
Yep. And we need to release that energy. When we hold it, when we don't face it, when we stuff it, it's going to push us down the ladder. We have
But
to
but we're
express it.
judging our like I'm judging even me saying I'm keeping the score on the ladder, right?
Yeah.
Implicit in that is me judging emotions, which isn't a really great thing to do.
No, it's totally not. And well, that's what I just said. It's about non judgment and being curious about them. It's that self compassion. That truly, that was probably the tipping point for me. Like showing myself compassion, which seems like such a, like every time I say it, what goes through my head is that just seems like a pad answer. Have you heard that phrase before? Pad answer? Yeah, I was wondering. It's like a token phrase. It's like that's what you do. Or, if like in the religious circles, just pray about it. That's a pat answer. It's like not one that's really weighty. But I think what I've learned in this process is No, like self-compassion shifts us. Those little imperceptible shifts, like when we show ourselves kindness, when we are mindful of, well, it makes sense that you are struggling with this right now. You experienced some pretty severe trauma in the first 7 weeks of your life. So no wonder you're reacting this way. But let's think about that for a minute. Are you reacting to a current threat? No. Ah, okay. So it's not reality. You're replaying that on today. Do you need to do that? No. Okay. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's being able to talk to yourself through it like you would a friend, almost sitting with yourself in that moment and going, okay, we're having a big response here. Why? It's not appropriate. So let's talk yourself through that and show yourself compassion. And then also, for me, the end of that mindfulness, kindness, and this is all from Kristen Neff. I don't know if you've heard of her. She researched self compassion. She's amazing. And so this is not for me. Give credit where credit is due. But at the end of that is common humanity. For me to be able to go now, finally, for the first time in the last 3.5 years, this community of adoptees being able to go, they get it. they understand that's common to our community. I don't feel alone anymore. So it's not keeping me stuck in that place. It's me going, I've had so much validation from these, adoptees while I'm going through my own process. But what's interesting is those who aren't adoptees, they don't understand that. They cannot relate to that. So I needed to find that community, those people that did get it. Because once I started coming out of the fog and getting it, I was like, I need somebody to validate what I'm feeling, you know? So anyway, that was a lot.
Okay, so where do I go from there? There's a few different places. Do you want to pick? Let me think what the different options are. Um, yeah, validation.
Okay.
Uh, to me, it seems to me, as in my experience,
Yeah,
so it's a double-edged sword.
sure. Explain. Tell me more.
Well, I my kind of coming out of the fog for the first time moment was me saying to a newish friend, a trainer, a quite an enlightened kind of person that I would struggle to call her a coach, but let's call her that. Let's just call her that.
Okay.
She's like a horse whisperer, and I was doing a communication skills um, course with her and horses, and
Mm.
I had a temper tantrum. And she said to me, "There's something going on for you, Simon. If you ever fancy chatting about it, I'll be up for that." So I went to see her, and suddenly these words came out from my mouth. I was talking about the teddy bear and the fact
Oh, yeah.
that she didn't love me enough to keep me, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she she just gave me this effing teddy bear as an effing consolation prize. What she said then, she didn't validate me. She said, I'm a so listeners, the dog just went spare, and I thought it's the Amazon delivery. And if we get a card, and my wife's told me to look out for the Amazon guy. If we get carded, i.e., doesn't deliver because I haven't been there to sign for it, then I'm going to be in the stuck, aren't I? Right. So a little break. So yeah, so I said to I said to Sarah, she didn't effing love me and to effing keep. She gave me the teddy bear, right? And what she said next wasn't, "Oh, you poor dear, that must have been really horrible for you," or anything like that. She said, "I'm a mum, Simon, and I don't think it would have been quite like that."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." Okay, so she she could have validated me. But instead, her natural reaction was to to coach me, to
To
share her
shift
truth,
you.
share her, yeah, to shift me, to share her truth. She shared her truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, you're a coach. So,
Mhm.
I've had a lot of coaching. I've had a lot of coaching around different stuff, and lots of business coaching and this kind of self-development coaching as well.
Right.
You say, and what a coach does is usually they create sufficient empathy, and
Hmm.
then they question your beliefs.
It's true.
So validation for me can be a double-edged sword. So there's a relief. I totally I totally get what you're talking about here, and people feel like me. Other, it's not just me that feels like this. I've got validation, right? I've got some validation. That kind of feels good, right? That's kind of good. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it can be a it can be a double-edged sword because it can keep us stuck. And who wants to be stuck? You started by talking about
Yeah.
pursuing healing. Well, you talked about transformation. This is all about change, right?
Right. It
So
is.
it's letting go. Like I said this a while. I said that I used to say this all the time, but I've stopped saying it. But I bring it back in now, right? So to me, the biggest challenge that we face as adoptees of a certain age, right? Because we're similar kind of age and generation,
Yep.
um, it is this belief that we're not good enough.
Yep.
I heard this Gabor Mate thing the other
Yes. Oh my
week.
gosh, I
Yeah,
love him.
the uh, I I don't get that much from him, but this is a complete bombshell in a brilliant way, right? He said that the feeling that we're not good enough, that is not a feeling, it's a belief.
Exactly.
And to me, busting beliefs seems
Yes.
to be easier than healing trauma, right? So I've this belief is wrong. I need to, or I suspect this belief may be off, right? I need to put
Mhm.
a magnifying glass on. I need to explore whether this belief is true or not, right? Um, and I need to check it out with some other people, and I need to, yeah, I need to do some exploration. You talked about curiosity, I think,
Yep.
before.
I did. Yep.
Right. So to me, that seems eminently doable. But
Yes.
healing trauma. Oh well, I need to. I need to realize that it's happening on these three levels: mind, body, spirit. I need to get in to do all this somatic stuff. I need to look at my mindset. I need to strengthen my like. It's a million and one. It's a million and one things, but nobody talks. Nobody talks in our community that I've heard about this being a
Oh,
belief that we're not
Simon,
good enough.
I talk about it all the time. It's so interesting that you're bringing this up right now. I literally just created a freebie on this exact thing because it is foundational for us. It's called the Perspective Shift Resource. And basically, the whole point is an exercise in helping you identify what those beliefs are, those subconscious beliefs that kind of run our lives as adoptees. The people that I've worked with, the things that I've heard is I shouldn't exist. If I mess up, they'll leave, or I'll leave first. Um, one of my biggest ones was I'm defective. I'm broken. I'm a mess. I'm a nuisance. I'm a burden. I mean, there's many, but these are those beliefs. They're not feelings, like Gabor Mate said, they're beliefs that literally live in our cellular tissue. And until we are able to pull them up to our consciousness and see them and deal with them in an active manner where we can actually shift our perspective from that belief to a new one. And it sounds so basic, but it's not. It does shift so much in us. That was a foundational thing for me, was being able to identify what those were, and then where does that belief show up in my body? Like, I'm defective, I feel it in my gut. Like, there's just, it's a sinking feeling. I don't, it's not good. It's not expansive, right? But when I shift that to I'm the best and I'm who I was created to be, if that's what I shift it to, for me right now, I believe that. But there's some people who would go with I'm defective and be like, I can't think I'm the best. How about I'm working on or learning that I am the best? Like you just shift your perspective. Now, how does that feel in my body? Ooh, that's different. My heart actually feels warm and swells and feels good. Like, this is how you begin to, with those tiny imperceptible shifts about beliefs, how you move up the ladder, how you transform, how you change. I am so with you. It is, beliefs is the basis. And that starts here. It starts in the mind. We have to recognize what's subconsciously there.
I totally agree with you. And I heard something interesting from a neuroscientist guy, I think it was. Um, I used to think about this a lot. You know, and it's the old Jung quote, isn't it? Carl Jung saying, "Until
Yeah.
we make the subconscious conscious, it will drive our life, and we will call it fate." Something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. We studied
And,
Carl Jung in my school. So, yeah, totally know what you're talking about.
and that's what coming out of the fog is for me. It's when we become conscious of our trauma. The trauma has been, we felt it, but we felt it, but we haven't realized it. I don't know. This
No,
is
that's exactly right. We
this.
felt it our entire life.
Yeah, I thought about this earlier. I did speak talking to somebody. I was thinking about stuff in education and advocacy stuff,
Yeah.
and they talk about being trauma informed, right?
Yeah.
Well, we don't need to be trauma informed because we're trauma experienced,
Yeah, it's true.
right?
It's true. I mean, I put trauma informed on my stuff just because that helps people find me, but it is true. I am definitely trauma experienced. Yeah, I like that. That's really good.
So this it is this neuroscientist, and the guy's called is I put the links in the book in the. I've name checked this guy before. I've tried to get him
Mm-hmm.
on the show, but he didn't answer. Anyway, guy called Chris Niebauer. Um, Great, really relatable, really precise, really clear, way better. Like a little kind of. I want him on the show because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
He says that it's not that it's not that it's subconscious. It's that we haven't got words for it.
Yeah. Yes, 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 yes. Absolutely. Because when the trauma happened, we didn't have them.
We didn't have them.
Mm-hmm. There was no
So, but
language.
there's two. But there's and I don't know what. It's an interesting idea that I'm kind of exploring at the moment
Yeah.
because the whole thing, like you, right? I did the head stuff first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a million and one times last year, people told me, "Well, you you can't talk therapy.
Yep.
Talk therapy can't move pre-verbal trauma because
Nope.
you haven't got the words for it." So there's something very interesting about
Yeah.
whether this subconscious conscious is a thing, or whether it's verbal, non-verbal to verbal. So a
I
lot of
think
people
it's both and.
think it's both and.
I think it's both. Absolutely. I think they're linked for sure.
But
Anyway,
if we
yeah,
read,
that's fascinating.
we'll look at. But if we look at I think we've the only truth that we find is our own truth for this, and the only truth, our own truth, is our experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a experience. And a lot of people say Nancy Verrier's book helped me
Yeah. Put words.
put words to my
Yep. That's what I
experience.
said. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that to me sounds more like the non-verbal to verbal thing.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
if I wasn't aware of the trauma, or if I didn't suspect the trauma, I wouldn't have bought the book, right? So I must have been
Of course.
conscious of it.
Well,
Of
okay,
it.
but wait, let's debate this for a minute.
No,
Okay.
let's not. I'm right. Okay, let's debate it. Only
Well,
joking.
I mean, I hear you. I think what I'm saying is the way I see nonverbal here is that's the subconscious. And the verbal is when we've brought it to the conscious. That's how I'm seeing it.
Uh, yes, I'm with you. And but out of the two models, subconscious to conscious, right,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and verbal, non-verbal to verbal, the non-verbal to verbal resonates more in this instance with me than the subconscious to the conscious.
Yeah. No, I totally hear that. When I first did EMDR on this, which I've done it multiple times, but when I first did it on this, that was the hardest piece for me because she kept telling me, stop using words. Your baby didn't have them. And I was like, well, then what do I do? I don't know how to, what are you talking about? And she goes, go get a pillow and bring it in here. And I was like, yes, ma'am. Went and got a pillow, brought it in. She took me back to the womb, took me back to what it experienced, what it felt like. And I have never in my life cried like that. It was like these deep guttural screams and this sounds really intense, okay, and it was. And at the very end I'm like screaming into a pillow because I'm in my home as I'm doing this. And at the end of it she goes, we're almost done with the session, I don't want to leave you there. And I said, I am so grateful you are leaving me here. This is unreal. For the first time, I've actually been able to feel, I mean, I felt them when I was a baby, but I was able to consciously experience what that pre-verbal feeling was like. And thank you for that. You have given me a gift today. That's what I told her because that's exactly that's like a picture of what you're talking about. Right?
Yeah, and it's an experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking
So
isn't an experience.
what did you say? No,
Talking
no, no,
isn't
no. It's not. And that's why I'm sure you've heard somatic experiencing. Like that's a type of, I wouldn't call it therapy.
Yeah, I'm
It's
doing it at the moment. Yeah.
yeah, I think we did talk about it yesterday. That is what that was. She was basically forcing me to experience in my body what my mind could not comprehend. And that's where the shift began to happen, was me being able to go, oh, whoa, this is way deeper. Now I get it. No wonder I've had the problems in my relationships. No wonder, you know what I mean? Like everything started to be like so much clearer to me after experiencing that.
Yeah, certainly. I think the it's the busting of a belief can be an experience too.
Yes, absolutely. Gosh, Simon, you're hitting it on all cylinders right now. Like when this first happened for me, it was probably a year and a half ago. Like I started doing this exercise that I just created. I started doing that. Like I started actually actively trying to bust my beliefs. And so I spent 10 days identifying what they were. And then once I identified it, I worked through this system that I came up with that I'm sharing with people. And I just remember feeling this like complete shift in who I was after that. It changed the trajectory of my being I don't know how to explain it. It sounds so weird, but that's exactly what happened. It was a busting out of what I'd had for 40, at that point, 8, 9 years, you know?
So I think, those experiences have a certain level of, have, well, it's a bit like your ladder, I guess. They can
Yeah.
have, the belief. You can have, oh yeah, you can have the Charlton Heston biblical belief. I'm nicking this from a guy called Michael Neal. He riffs on this, coach guy in the West Coast. He said, you can have the Charlton Heston biblical epiphanies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can have the Homer Simpson dough, you know. And there's everything where in between, you can see through something. I'd a process for busting beliefs. That's a,
Yeah.
that's a new one on me. I'm going to take a look at that.
And any input you have for me, I would welcome, Simon, because as an adoptee yourself, I would love to know what the experience is like for you.
I think the biggest ones for me have happened. Well, you said happened two, happened four, whatever. Like
Yeah.
I didn't make them happen.
No.
I just kept going.
Right.
So I know.
With them.
Well, kept on pursuing it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my questions. I'll get back to in a minute. But keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have a meltdown, and
Mm-hmm.
then you keep on going, or you
Yep.
have a little bit of a pause, right? So I was looking at my adoption file this morning, and in there, it's all the letters from doing the tracing and stuff like that. And there's one from the guy at the post adoption support team who helped me
Mm-hmm.
get my first, my mother's name, biological mother's name. And then there's a letter from him saying it's been a while since we've been in touch. You know, um, can we be of any assistance? And I left it alone. And, I didn't at that I'd taken a break from it for 6 months.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
I think we all
and
do that at some point because I
yeah,
did that
so
too.
but we kind of like we may have pause, but we keep going. We keep pursuing it, uh, and and then stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
We find out stuff. We
Yep.
we listen to a podcast. We read a book.
Yeah. It's so
we get
true.
we get our certificate, we get our adoption file, we get the name, we find out something, we go on the ancestry, and something happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our belief is changed for us. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we make. I don't think we make the belief. I don't think we make the belief happen. That's why I'm very interested in the process. I guess I think you can be more. It's the openness and the curiosity, and um, the willingness to be wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely. Even
Because
in our
open
talk
and curiosity, that
yesterday.
sounds great. Oh yeah, we're now. Who's going to say? Who's going to say? So Simon, um, are you open? Of course not. No, I'm totally shut down. Do you know what I mean? Everybody's gonna go. That's what you're thinking. The pad answer. You say,
Yeah. Yes.
yes, of
Yes.
course. What have you got to show me?
Yeah.
Um, so, but willingness to be wrong, I think, is perhaps a little bit more precise and a little bit more
No, I agree with you.
accurate. So, what about this? The who was it? I was listening to me the other day. The if we say he said he or she said something like the pursuit of happiness keeps it out of our reach, something like that,
Hmm.
right? The pursuit of happiness, and but to what extent does the pursuit of healing keep being
Mm.
whole out of our reach?
I think we can be whole even while we're healing. I think we can be whole and complete, lacking nothing, even while we're healing, because we're layered people. And there's going to be things that we aren't ready to face and we need to continue working up the ladder so that we are ready and they get revealed in time. That's how I see it. Um, so
Can you
yeah,
can you relate that back to your three level mind body spirit thing,
yeah.
or
So
does it relate?
it does. Interestingly, I think for me, it was a long period of that level of consciousness of things happening to me at the bottom, where I was steeped in shame and guilt, which are two big emotions for adoptees. So I was there for a really long time, and I stayed in the mind with talk therapy. Okay, that's what I did for years. Nobody understanding that adoption or me had impacted me. And then come 3.5 years ago, well, and then the foundation for that, like it's interesting. I'm gonna have to come up with some sort of picture of this, but the foundation that kept me, as you talked about, moving forward was my spiritual foundation. That spiritual piece that really my adopted mom kind of showed me, patterned for me in my life. And I'm so grateful to her for that. Not everybody, they can identify God as their universe, their higher power, divine, however they want to describe it. For me, it's my God. And that spiritual foundation helped me to pursue the stuff that was going on in my mind. But I stayed there for a really long time until, and those layers stayed subconscious until I began to pursue the body stuff. And that started happening 3.5 years ago when I did that experience that I just explained to you from my EMDR therapist was the opening of this whole new layer that I was now armed and ready to deal with because I had the head knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we use this. You mentioned this word somatic experiencing,
Yeah.
and yeah, you talked about. I think different people do different things, and different therapists do different things, and
Yes.
they mix different things, and they call it different things. So I don't want to.
Eclectic.
Yeah, it's all a bit cryptic. So I was talking to. I went to see somebody, and they were going to do MDR. But was it MDR? I don't know. Who knows? But when I looked for a pure play, this is interesting. I looked. So a therapist I saw last year, who said that she was thinking of retiring, but she wouldn't leave me in the lurch. That
Mm,
left me in the lurch. Okay. Um, uh, and it didn't rock me. So it was a good sign, right? It's a good
that
sign.
is a good sign.
Progress. So then I was looking at somebody she was going to do. I could only find one somatic person within a 2-hour drive of me.
It is
So
not
if you put
common.
therapist if you put therapist in, I'd get
Oh, of course.
probably 1,000
But you
within
put
2 hours.
somatic in front of it and
But yeah, it's funny. Um, so going back to the spirit thing,
yeah.
um, you used you talked about consciousness or high power intelligence,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Does it annoy you when people say God, universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it? It really doesn't matter what you call it. Does that annoy you when they say it doesn't matter what
I
you call
don't think it annoys me. I think people have their own process. I used to be really judgmental of that. Like, it's just God. Can you just name it God, please? Like, I used to feel
it?
that way. I don't anymore. And I think the reason why I don't anymore is because I realize people have to figure this stuff out on their own. I can't force them to believe what I believe. But what I can do is help them lean into spirituality as a way toward wholeness. Everybody needs a spirituality basis. I really believe that, no matter what it is. For me, it is God, but it could be the universe for somebody else. It could be a doorknob for somebody else. I don't care. Whatever it is that works for you and helps you get to a place of wholehearted living, connecting to that spiritual piece of us is a part of that.
Yeah. So, listeners, don't do what Simon does and get annoyed by somebody saying it doesn't matter. Do do what Julie says, right? Do what Julie
Oh,
says.
you're so nice.
Come up with your own thing, right? My longest term mentor coach lady, who I only speak to a couple of times, well, once a year, I think now. She calls it Humpty.
She
Like
calls it hunting.
no, Humpty Dumpty, like the
Oh, Humpty
children's.
Dumpty.
Yeah, Humpty. She calls
Yeah.
it Humpty, like the
Yeah.
children's like
Yeah.
character, right? She calls it Humpty. So you call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
Don't, as I say, don't do this at home, kids. Don't do what Simon does, right? Um.
Simon, but I want to say, don't judge yourself for doing that.
Oh, okay. We could. This one could roll and roll, couldn't we?
I
Yeah. Okay.
know.
So, you completely different subject, right? Because otherwise I'll start sharing my stuff, and I'm trying to do less of that. Somebody has said somebody has told me that somebody criticized me for um, sharing too much of my own stuff and not letting people get a word in edgeways.
Well, you
So
haven't done that.
I, I've taken that on the chin. My only excuse is that sometimes I get a little bit excited.
Sure.
My intention is to let the guest talk, or else it would be 500 episodes of just Simon talking. If it was, if I was the if I was the Boris Johnson, if I was the Boris
Oh,
Johnson
I see what you did there.
adoption podcast, I was gonna actually mention another politician. I'll let you guess who that could have been. Right. So, you did a career. Sorry, you did a qualification in counselling, and yet
Mm-hmm.
you're a coach. So,
Yep.
can you explain the difference with relation to what we've been talking about?
Okay. Let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're wanting to understand the layer of I pursued counseling, but then chose coaching instead.
Yeah, but I want. Well, no, not really. Well, you could answer that one. You can answer that
No,
question.
I want to know what you are trying to find. So
So,
maybe I didn't hear you right.
I'd love you to explain the difference between a counsellor and a coach, given the within the context of our conversation for the last 50 minutes or whatever it's been, an hour.
Okay. So a counselor is somebody who is trained in the past. That sounds weird, but basically helping the client dig into what are their roots, what got them to this place. So you focus more on the past, where a coach, sorry, I'm trying to give you a visual, where a coach is embodying empowerment and giving them the strength to find it within themselves, not from their past, but from their present. How do I move forward knowing what I know now and become empowered to basically not need this coach anymore? It's similar in counseling in that you're trying to work yourself out of a job, but in coaching, you're really trying to help them find it within themselves. And you ask a lot of questions like you talked about with that coach that had helped you, where she said, well, that's not my experience as a mom, or however she said it to you. So it's being able to give them a whole different perspective. There are similarities, don't get me wrong, but coaching is much more future minded, whereas counseling is more past minded, in my experience.
Yeah, and yet it seems to me there's a load more. So, would you see counselling and therapist as, would you use those, see those people as the same, like a synonym?
Yes,
You would,
I
okay.
would. Mm-hmm.
Because there's far more adoptee therapists than there are adoptee coaches, right?
As far as I know, yeah. And I think, well, at least what I've seen, trust me, it's hard. Like, I've had so many adoptees come to me, do you have professionals? And I'm like, I do now because of the connections that I've made. And so there's websites that I can send them to in the States that they can find someone. But even then, I think what I've realized is the talking, we've done that our whole life. We need to experience the nonverbal. Let me just bring it back there in order to move ourselves forward to a healing, healthy place. We do. So there is a piece of going back to the past. There is. If we don't acknowledge that that happened, we're going to stay in the fog. So there is a piece of that. Yes. Um, I find coaching more beneficial personally.
So we've been on quite a while. I'm thinking, what have I not asked you about that you'd like to share?
Um,
Oh, we haven't talked about what keeps us stuck, haven't we?
oh,
So,
sure.
so
Well, for me personally, like I did think about this. Like, what for me personally, what's kept me stuck in the past, not like in the physical past, but in my own past, what has kept me stuck is being so focused on the mind that I can hide behind and isolate myself within the learning. And what I mean by that is, let me just spin my wheels reading every book I have. Let me just spin my wheels focusing on other people's problems because that's my job. And if I do that, then I can avoid dealing with this. So these are two things that kind of came up for me personally. I can easily hide behind gaining knowledge, but not allowing that knowledge to trickle down into my body. That's been where the shift happened. What kept me stuck was all this pursuit, was all this seeking, searching. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it's coupled with the body and the spirit, some magic happens. So that's what kept me stuck, was spinning my wheels in the talk therapy, spinning my wheels in those things that, and honestly, Simon, I was doing what everybody told me to do.
yeah,
I am a very good obedient person. So like if I go to somebody, I'm like, I'm really struggling. Like I went to one of my past therapists. I think I told you this yesterday. And I was like, I'm at an impasse. Things are not going well. I don't know what to do. And he was like, you need to go see an EMDR therapist. That's the first thing you need to do. You need to do parts work, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, found somebody, did it. Like that's what he told me to do. So I did it. Next, he said, you're going to need to do body work. I didn't know what that was. Like I had no idea at the time. And so I was like, okay. And so then I finished with my EMDR therapist and I find a somatic therapist. And Simon, I'm sorry to say this, but she was a total quack. It said somatic in front of everything that she did, but this is what she told me to do. Go put your hands under the water and pay attention to the water. And now that's a grounding tool. Great. But you're not helping me deal with whatever it is in my body. And then she said, play with Play-Doh. I'm like, what are you talking about? How is that going to help me move through this trauma that's in my body? So it was like, and I told my therapist that later, and she goes, oh, Julie, I'm so sorry. That is not what I meant. So once I actually found a somatic coaching program, and that coaching program is what helped me understand it. So interesting, but yeah.
I thought you were going to say, you've told me to put the hands under the water. I've been washing up for my now ex-husband and my two kids for years, and it never did me any good. I can't understand how putting my hands underwater is going to help me heal pre-verbal trauma. That's what I thought
Well,
you.
what's hilarious is that's probably what was going on underneath the surface, but I didn't notice it. So thank you. Thank you for putting words to what I didn't really know yet.
And just to show that I'm a metrosexual guy, before we started this conversation, uh, I was doing the ironing, and after I'm going to finish the last bit of.
I'm so proud of you.
So proud of me.
Yeah.
I do nothing about the house apart from a
The
bit of.
ironing.
I don't always do all of the ironing. So, but for some reason, I feel that I need to drop that into
You're
kind of
bringing it full circle.
bringing it full circle. Okay. So as always, listeners, I would urge you to check out the show notes and find out what Julie is up to. And I think when you've got the tool thing that you're talking about, you want
Yeah,
to,
the perspective shift resource.
yeah. Is that the one that's online already?
Yeah, it's already all there. Yeah, it's all the stuff that I offer is in a link that I'll give to you. But if you want me to, I can single out that link because I mean, they're all in there. Like if you go to the one link, you'll see all the stuff there.
Okay.
So
I will find that on the website and put it.
yeah,
So yeah, and Julia wants some feedback on that, so that would be
I
great.
do. I really do. I want to make it better for this population for sure.
Right. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, thank you so much for this, Simon. Really, it's been an honor. And I just was so floored when I got the message from you. And I was so encouraged because it is a passion project for me. Like what I'm doing right now is a passion project for me. And never in a million years would I have foreseen that this would be what I was doing. Like I'm thrilled to be able to be in this community, in this place. So I really, really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
You're very welcome. Thanks, listeners. We will speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Yay. Bye.